Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast brought to you by the Draft Professor. Joined by Newt Weston and Owen playing hurt for the second straight day. Owen, how you doing?
You know what? I get to come on and talk about prospects, so I can't really complain about much, now can I?
So, Newt, what did you think of this defensive line group that we did today?
So I don't know, looking at the defensive line group, and I think this is kind of the, epitome of this year's draft for the defensive line group. It is, okay, there's some guys that have some unique talents, but there's not necessarily a guy that we watched in this section that I'm like super excited about. Not to like ward off anyone right away, but we've talked about it kind of early on. I think this edge group is a lot of fun. I think this defensive line group is middling, especially when you come off of last year's class.
Yeah, and Newt, how many of these guys were new watches for you, meaning that you hadn't even watched them during the summer?
Probably over half at this point. I tried to watch about 12 for everyone that I did on Owen's channel, just so I could get a quote unquote top 10. That wasn't even like a true top 10, but there's a fair amount that are new from this group. It's Aaron Hall, Gil Howard, and Cameron Ball. So about half of the defensive tackles that we're going to talk about today were new for me.
Okay. And Owen, how many of these players was this podcast your first watch for?
For me, outside of, I think only, technically two, I guess. So I've watched, in the summer scouting process, I watched Darrell Jackson from Florida State. However, I had watched one other player, not through the summer scouting process, though, when I was working at UB, and this player was at NIU, Skylar Gil Howard. He was kind of their dude there and obviously transferred to Texas Tech. So I watched him in a different context. So I've had vision on him, not in the concept of like what he is as a draft prospect, but more so I've just seen his film in general.
Okay. So we're going to start with defensive tackle Cameron Ball from Arkansas. Arkansas defensive line, we're getting a lot of love during the summer because Randall Slifer is an Arkansas fan.
He's just stacking the deck for himself.
Yeah, so this is us checking as the deck got stacked and saying, is Cameron Ball draftable? Newt, what do you think?
Well, I think, first of all, he definitely is draftable. And you take a look at Cameron Ball, I think that there's a lot of fun when you watch his tape. One of the things that I have written down under my strengths is that he's got great first-step quickness. I think anytime that you're able to have explosion off the line and be impactful in terms of disrupting run lanes and also giving yourself an opportunity to affect the pass rush, you're going to be someone that's looked at in a little bit more of a higher regard when you get into day 3. I like his hand placement, his technique. I think that that's going to come from him being a redshirt senior and him spending a lot of time playing collegiate football. But I think he's able to stack and shed with his hands. I don't necessarily see a pass rush plan from him. It's a lot of, can I get my hands on someone quickly and try to get them out of the way? I've seen him try to throw like a club. I've seen him try to do other things. Not that it's like necessarily super effective, but his hands are moving. They're very active. So I do like that. And when he's trying to put his hands, especially in that stack and shed, I think it does work out really well. And then last thing, and this is going to be something for some of these guys on here are, the highs and lows, but his frame is about exactly where I want it to be. 6'5" to 323 pounds. You love seeing that out of a guy that you want to be kind of that stuffer right in the middle. I think Cameron Ball has, a little bit of flash in his pass rush. I think he's got a good base in his run defense, but I think he's got opportunities to grow in both. I've seen him get wiped out in run defense when an offensive lineman gets their hands on him quickly. And if he's double teamed, he's not going to hold the point of attack. And at that size, I would really wish that he'd be able to have a little bit more of a stout anchor. And then, like I said, with the pass rush, the hands are active and he wants to get him somewhere he is, but his skill set and his pass rush plan just isn't necessarily that consistent where he's on a down by down basis, someone that's super dangerous. one of the things that I mentioned early on, I do for kind of like my own data analysis is snaps per loss. I actually got that from Dean Keating, by the way. He phrased it a little bit differently, but this was a couple weeks ago. My dad is a little old, but it was like 189 snaps per loss, which you talk about a good interior presence, you're probably hoping for like 40 to 50 snaps per loss. So he's not really affecting the game when you get into the backfield. I think he's a guy that can serve the point of a rotational piece in a defensive line group, and really almost do it on all three downs, especially if he can get some good coaching under his belt. But definitely a guy that I think will be drafted just because of what he's been able to show. He's a team captain for Arkansas, and the intangibles, I think, are all there for him.
Oh, and where are you on Cameron Ball?
Yeah, I'm pretty close to where Newt is. I think, you can't question. He's got the size, plays with the size. He's got a little bit of juice, especially for a guy as big as he is, but I wouldn't call him like a super athlete or anything like that. Yeah. He does his best work when he can consistently get hands-on and be kind of this bigger freight train in the middle of the defensive line. When he's not and he's reacting to what other guys are doing and trying to be like work in space, it's where he starts to lose his grip a bit on being a kind of a rotational type player. So Newt really hit it out of the park with everything else. I think you're going to see him get drafted because he has a size. He's a captain. He's been a multi-year starter. He's got all these things going for him. And just, again, the unteachables there with that size and some of that movement that he has at that size. A team's going to want to bring him in just to have him as like a depth lineman, eventually maybe coaching him up to a point where his technique is consistent enough where he's a consistent run stuffing, kind of block eater type interior and defensive tackle. This isn't a guy that's going to have a super high ceiling. He's going to be a dude who comes in that, if he's coached up the right way, can be kind of your stereotypical big gap eating nose tackle.
Yeah, I like that. Just to kind of pick it back to you, Owen, I noticed this with him, and I think it happens with these guys that aren't like these freaks, but I think that at a certain point you can become too tall to be a defensive tackle, just from the standpoint of you're going to start to lose leverage. I noticed that from him too. It felt like, and I think at 6'5", I'm not saying that that's too tall, but I think that like my favorite defensive tackles are at that like 6'3", 6'4", where they're meeting the offensive lineman. They're able to get kind of even with their pads naturally and not have to have, a ton of flexibility to them. It just comes just due to their size. I don't know if like anything that you saw at UB or with how you look at these guys, if you have a similar feeling.
No, yeah, I definitely agree. I think if you're going to be tall enough, you have to bring that girth with you. You have to be 320 plus if you're going to be 6'5" plus. Like, you can't be 6'5" and 310. It can't be long and lean, especially at D tackle. That's when you start getting issues of, are they playing too high? Like, he plays high pads at sometimes, and it affects him on occasion, but he's also got the size and mass that even if he comes up out of his stance, sometimes it doesn't even really matter to whoever's blocking, whoever's going against them. So, but yeah, I agree with you definitely, and we'll talk about a guy here in a second that plays with really good leverage, and he has some natural leverage because of his height as opposed to...
He's got a lot of natural leverage.
Well, yeah, it's really... I'm glad you brought up that point because we're going to get a quick dichotomy with that with the next two players we have coming up.
So the next player we have is Lee Hunter from Texas Tech. So Texas Tech has a pretty good defense. We're going to be covering on different podcasts a lot of Texas Tech players. But
on different podcasts, we're going to cover 3 of them tonight.
Yeah. But Owen, what did you have on Lee Hunter from Texas Tech?
Yeah. Also, I forgot to mention this just to throw back to our Arkansas guy. Randall gets a lot of pull for being an Arkansas fan, but I give you like 7 names from UB, and I don't see a single one of them on any of these draft professor live streams, Jim. But anyway, Lee Hunter, Texas Tech.
Red Murdoch is going to be covered on Friday.
Owen called out Red early on. Who's big on Red Murdoch now? Dale Altman. Dale loves Red Murdoch.
He's a stud. He's an absolute stud. Speaking of UB, we got some Wednesday night action going on right now. They're down 17-10 to Central Michigan, so that's fun. But going back to
with the program,
yeah, probably. I was with my coaching buddies for this, and they're like, when they were up 10-3, they're like, it's because they finally cut the dead weight, and I was like, wow, guys. But back to Texas Tech's $10 million defense with all these players we're talking about being on Texas Tech, also being transfers. Lee Hunter. 6'4", 330, kind of a similar build, I would say, to what we were just talking about Cameron Hall, where he's this big, girthy dude. Doesn't have a ton of twitch to him. The same thing with like the pass rush. A lot of times it's he'll throw out moves, but they're very like kind of, I don't want to call them lazy, but they're just slow developing. Nothing really dynamic with him being able to counter off moves and being able to, if he gets off his stance and he gets into guys and is able to throw that weight around, he's definitely able to impact the game a lot more than a guy who maybe would be smaller stature than him. But another guy that I'm really kind of lower on, just because I think he's more scheme specific and or positional specific, where you want to have him rotate in. He's not going to be a guy that transcends multiple different phases of being a defensive tackle, that you're going to want to take him with a higher pick and be like, okay, yeah, this is going to be a guy that could play all 3 downs in the NFL level.
No, I like that. I think that there's a world for Lee Hunter where you can see him as a starting nose tackle. I think he's got the build for it, and I think he's got the mentality to be able to play that. I think his run defense is phenomenal. And he's going to be a guy that when you start to take a look at him, I think he's a stout run defender. When he was at UCF, I think he led the nation over a 2-year span in stops where it was logged at or behind the line of scrimmage on a run play. He had like 52 or something like that, which is an absurd number of 2 years. So he's phenomenal. I mean, to that point where his nickname is the Fridge. That was created, I believe, at UCF. Maybe it was even before that, but I think it's a really well put, obviously a throwback to the refrigerator. But with it, I think that I will probably be right around where Owen is, because I don't know if I see a ton of upside with him in terms of how much more he has to offer. I think he's got an athletic ceiling. When he gets out in space, he's not really all that frightening. I mean, he's frightening because he's a massive human being coming at you. And it is kind of funny to see him out in space. Like when he gets moving, he can knock someone. But the problem is he just doesn't have the closing speed. He doesn't have the short area quickness that, I take a look at Cameron Ball and I like his first step. And Lee Hunter's got a pretty decent first step for his size, but I think that Ball can do a couple more things in terms of where he is with that short area quickness. Now, Lee Hunter makes up for that in his ability to just like 2-gap and be ridiculous when it comes to stuffing the run. I think it's going to be something that he does the best. One of the things that I wanted to get a chance to watch, and I didn't until Jack Brentnall shared it on Twitter, was the BYU game this last weekend. Steve with CFC Bears didn't have up the film yet, and he had like 7 pressures, a sack against BYU, and that was a huge game for them, top 10 matchup. And I think it was kind of like that little glimpse of, hey, maybe this guy's more than a stout run defender. Maybe he can offer a little bit of juice and be a 3-down, 1-tech. The problem is I just need to see it more consistently. For me right now, I think he is an early down run defender that has a limited ceiling just due to the athleticism that he's going to have.
So, Owen, do you think Lee Hunter is going to crack your top 150, or is he so low that it's even later than that?
I mean, both these guys we talked about, they have a skill set that can get you in a point where you're thinking about taking them just because they're going to bring value to your team by being such a good run defender and a big body in the middle of that defense. So I wouldn't ever rule them out, but they're not currently projected to be in my top 150. I'm not saying they're super far out of it, like they're totally like out of the range, but for me, I just have other guys I value higher, especially at this position where there is going to be skill sets that I put more value in it. There's more dynamic ways to impact a game than what these guys bring. They are NFL players, but it's going to be how much are you actually truly valuing them type of guys.
And that was me. I was pretty sure that was your answer. That was me interpreting the report that I heard you and Nate give.
Interpreting.
I'm interpreting. Wow. Good to know. And I said that I am completely sober. Albert Regis from Texas A&M. Newt, what did you think?
So Albert Regis, he's a fun watch just because he's going to be a guy for me that I love the intangibles that he brings. So he's a shorter guy as well. He's not quite the guy that we were talking about, but he does have a lot of natural leverage with that 6'1" frame, 310. He's going to be more of like that 3-tech, just given that frame that I don't think he's necessarily able to be a 2-gapping run defender. However, he plays really, really good run defense. I think that with him, you look at him in a down-by-down basis, and he's not an overly dominant player. I don't think he is a big play disruptor. I don't think he's going to be super flashy and like get into the backfield a ton. He doesn't necessarily have the pass rush plan that is going to pop and really wow you. But the consistency that he plays with, for me, is something that is really alluring. He plays in, you know, we always talk about this. He plays with a hot motor, and that's something that I really like. Down by down, he is always, you know, snap to whistle, going full steam. I think that his anchor, for me, is one of the things that I'm really drawn to, where, you know, he might not have that flash in terms of being able to get hands on a guy really quickly and get into the backfield. Like, you know, I was talking about a little bit with a Cameron Ball, but I think that the consistency that Albert Regis offers is almost a little bit more of a benefactor, because you have that safety blanket. You got a guy that, in my opinion, he can anchor when double teamed. He's going to have some good natural leverage to him. I think he does have a good first step. I would expect it with him being, you know, I'm talking about him being a little bit lighter at 317, but compared to the other couple of guys, he does look it. And I just think the way that he carries himself is just so much like a professional football player, that I think he's going to have a really good opportunity to be in a defensive backfield for, you know, 1 or 2 contracts, just because I think he's got all of the intangibles. He's got the strength to play the game. He's got some first step quickness. And I think he's the kind of player that is going to be able to continuously show out in a way that is a reliable and contributing way for a team. So I liked Albert Regis a lot. I think that he's a great dude in terms of someone that is going to be not sexy in terms of the pick, but reliable in terms of the pick. But just to kind of like, you know, put a little bit of reference on it, I have him just a little bit above Lee Hunter, who is just a little bit above Cameron Ball, and all of them are in that early day 3 conversation for me. So I think I have all of these guys right around one another. And, you know, depending on what I'm looking for, if I want a 1-tech, I'm not taking Albert Regis. I'm going to be taking Lee Hunter instead. And it's just going to be some of the differences that they offer. If I'm looking for a guy that's able to, you know, give me a little bit of juice as a pass rusher, you know, I'm going to probably start to look at Cameron Ball a little bit more. So I think all these guys, for me at least, they're right around one another. I just think they do things a little bit differently, and they offer just some unique perspectives at what it looks like to be a defensive lineman.
Now, Newt, I'm going to throw a name out of you from a guy we covered last draft cycle. He's currently in the NFL. Was a big my guy. I don't know how high you were. I can't really remember. But the L Regis reminds me a lot of Ty Hamilton from Ohio State last year.
Okay.
Where now Hamilton was like 6'2", 6'3",
Yep.
hovering around 300, maybe a little sub that. Whereas Regis definitely has him in the weight category there, being 317. He definitely carries it pretty well. I couldn't tell you he looked 317 just by watching the film. But he definitely gives up that.
Yeah.
And he gives up that lack of height there. But for me, it's just talking about them as prospects when it comes to watching him play with Regis, that is, who has such a natural leverage against the run as a 3-tech, where he's dropping out of that knee. He's not getting moved off his spot. He's come firing out of his stance, low pad level. That Notre Dame game especially, he was just showing off a lot of plays where he was able to just be lower than the guys and out leverage them and win his gap because of that. Now, similar to Hamilton, he has very active hands, and when he's not, just holding up a block, he's able to, shoot gaps a little bit and get off blocks and get back there and impact the run. He's a very solid run defender. But despite him having those active hands, he doesn't really have a pass rush when he's on the attack as opposed to trying to shed blocks. He just struggles a bit to consistently attack that way. And it's replicated, or it's shown in his PFF stats and his pass rush reps and everything that you can watch that kind of indicates that. It's just he's not going to be a big splashy player, but if you're a team that runs a heavy rotation and an even style front, you need a 3 tackle or even a 5 tech that needs to be a stout against the run, using his hands and not being moved off a spot on one-on-one blocks because you have your 1 tech taking up those double teams. Regis is a guy that he's going to get that play. He's a guy like, if the Bills didn't go ahead and draft 3 or 2 D tackles last year, I'm looking at him as a guy I'm pegging for like the third in day 3, like you're talking about. I think I have him probably the highest of the 3 guys we talked about, but they're all in that same bucket just because I feel like his skill set being a 3 tech, I feel like I can pull a little bit more out of it as opposed to trying to pull it out of one of those more stout, bigger guy 1 techs, which typically isn't usually the problem there. Usually you want to go with the guy who just has more mass, but I think Regis is such a unique skill set for size that it really stands out to me as a guy that you're not going to come around by very often. So he's a specific skill set. If you really need it for your defense, you can target him early day 3 and get some money back on your payment there.
I think so. And I think one of the things, talking about him and, I look at Lee Hunter. And I mentioned already that I think, what you see is what you get from him. I think you're getting something that is reliable with Lee Hunter as well. But with Regis, I think that you have a player that really understands the game and he brings more than what you just might see out of that vanilla 3 tech. Just kind of looking back at some of the things for him, he was, I think, is his sophomore year of high school. He was first team all district as a tight end. So he was able to, kind of show out athletically on the other side of the ball and be a huge presence there. And then, I look at him and I look at the way that, he approaches the game and that mentality. Please, he was also the most improved defensive player in 2024 for Texas A&M. And we're talking about a big time program here. So, sometimes the most improved player award isn't the sexiest award, but it does show a lot about your character and disposition and all of those things. And talking about with what you said, the ability and the flexibility with that 3 tech and how you can be a little bit more of a desirable type player. I really like all of those. And, I've got Albert Regis for me right now. He's like, probably going to be in that 4th round grade. Like I said, he's early day 3. I wouldn't bat an eye if anyone took him right at the end of round 3, just because they like the kind of guy that he was.
Okay. So this is a player where grades, this is the 3rd defensive line podcast that we have covered Darrell Jackson Jr. The grades are coming back with high variation. So this is probably going to be a player that we will talk about more than once. We'll talk about him today, but we're probably going to talk about him a lot more as the draft season progresses. So Owen, Darrell Jackson Jr. from Florida State, 6'5", 337. What else do you have?
Yeah, I mean, this guy is – I can see why there's a lot of variance because you watch a lot of his tape and there's a lot of flash and pop to it just because he does a lot of fun things. He just throws grown men around like it's his job. Like he's just having a good time. And it will be his job soon because he's such a big, freakily strong dude that he's able to absolutely – if you get your hands on you, you're not driving him off that spot. Like he is going to be a guy that if he's going to get off that ball and fire out and attack some of these NFL offensive linemen, he is resetting that line of scrimmage, no doubt. And he's got good athleticism. I think more so last year than maybe this year. He definitely showed some flashes of like a good pass rush skill set where he's able to have some bend, has some quick active hands, really just throws the kitchen sink at dudes and tries to beat them with every move in his imaginable possible. So he's got a guy that has a bunch of power, has some pass rush upside. You're like, okay, this sounds like a prototypical NFL stud and 1 tech. Where are we falling off here? And I think I'm leveling out a bit on him as a player just because I think we talked about earlier, guys who are this tall, he can struggle with playing with some low pads and getting guys into his frame. And despite being 337 and freakishly strong with his hands, guys can move him off his spot, and he can suffer in run defense when he is facing against like a double team as opposed to 1-on-1 with that offensive guard. So he has the size and ability of like a one-tech difference maker, but when put into situations that one-techs are supposed to come in and succeed and beat those double teams, be aggressive that way, he doesn't really match up to it as much in my eyes. So he's either like a souped-up 3-tech that you just throw out there and have like the beefiest D-line possible, have him as a 0-tech so he can maybe get off the ball and get into these centers and like have more one-on-one opportunities. Or he needs to get better at playing with a lower pad level to really accentuate that, because everything else in his bag there as a prospect is something that I really love. So I have him with a 3rd-round grade. I know there's some guys that are higher up in like the 2nd-round grades and stuff like that, but I'm down in the 3rds just because I don't really see a very clean projection fit. He's kind of the magic bag of beans. He's the mystery box. You can go ahead and get like your normal like one techs in the your giant one techs in the camera ball and Lee Hunter like we talked about, or you can get the mystery box. It could even be a 1-tech, but also it could be anything. Try to throw a little family reference in there, but yeah, he's a special player, but also one that I don't really see a clean fit for.
Yeah, I think. So let me throw some numbers out, and Jim's got a couple of them on the board. But 6'5" and a quarter, I got him 341, 337, 35 and a quarter inch arms, and then 11 and an 1/8 inch hands. Like this dude, the build to him is insane. The first step that he has is insane. And I think Owen did a really good job of kind of like stating all of those things in terms of, hey man, this is a guy that, he's built in a lab. You see the athleticism, you see the size, you see the strength and all of those things. And you say, well, why aren't we talking about this guy in the first round? And it's just last year was inconsistent tape at pass rush, which Owen said. And this year it's like non-existent tape at pass rush. He just really, really struggles to pick that up. And as a redshirt senior now, I worry about that. One of those redshirt years was he was forced to sit out because of transfer rules from the NCAA when he went from Miami to Florida State. So, maybe a little bit there. But, I look at last year with Farmer being alongside next to him, and I wonder, with his success as a pass rusher last year, was that due to the fact that there was a drafted defensive tackle that was also eating up some of that presence, and now that he's the dude, our teams, kind of planning those double teams and those chips against him, and he's really struggling to find an answer to it. And that's kind of my concern. I think with him, he's going to be higher than the rest of the guys we talked about. I've also got a 3rd-round grade on him. But I got a low 3rd-round grade on him where, man, if you could just be average as a pass rusher, just average, I'd gladly go ahead and talk about you in the top 50. I don't think it's a question. It's just the inconsistency and his ability to not be able to utilize that first step quickness, that short area quickness, that strength, that size, all of those things. Because you have these, but just because you have them, you're not using them. And that's the maddening part to me about Darrell Jackson Jr. out of Florida State is he should be better than this with, every intangible that he has. And he's just kind of an average defensive tackle, maybe a little bit up in the run defense. Like maybe he's a plus run defender, but whatever he gives you there, he really is deficient as a pass rusher when that's what I look at him to be the dude for. So he's got a 3rd-round grade for me. Probably my worst graded pass rusher, truth be told, which is absolutely maddening. I don't understand why. But here we are.
So we've had 7 draft professors cover Darrell Jackson Jr. He's in Dane Brugler's top 50, which was released, I believe, earlier this week. Jack Brentnall also had him in the top 50. Dalton Gentry from Home Squad Sports had a 2nd-round grade. You two having 3rd-round grades make you in the top 50% of his draft professor grades because everybody else is day 3.
Really?
Like, yeah. So that's like you guys are actually closer to the top ceiling for him.
And I feel like I'm low on him just because I hammer, and I literally, because on my scale 1 to 7, he's a 2 for pass rush, which I don't give out many 2s. I'm pretty generous as an evaluator, but he's so bad. But everything else that he does is phenomenal.
So
use of hands has got to get better. Owen said that really well. I shouldn't say that his hands are good, but like, he gives you all the intangibles. So like when I look at Brugler and Jack and all those people, Dalton, I'm like, yeah, I get where that second round grade is. I really do. I just absolutely struggle to like kind of accept him where I have him, because I want more and I don't know how much more I'm going to get, because we're talking about a 5th-year senior.
Right. Well, and I think it's more of how do you value, because the scouting reports that I heard were exactly the same. Like it's not like you guys found something or saw something nobody else did. It's how do you value what you saw? And what I mean by that is if you think of a playoff team that definitively needs a defensive tackle. Right. So he may not be there at the end of round 3 for Buffalo.
No.
Right. Which means that if you want to take him, you have to take him in round 2. So there's not a lot of defensive tackles here. Right. So I think we could see 3 defensive tackles go in the top 50. I think last year we had like 7 or 8 go. So if you need a defensive tackle, this is not the year to need one.
Yeah, he's the guy. I watched him and I come out with my grade after watching him, just like my instant reaction grade. I'm like, wow, how is this not higher? Like I was saying I had so many wows and amazement plays. Like even last year when he was getting some of that pass rushing starting to go, he had some popping plays as a pass rusher in 2024. It's just all gone away in 2025. But he's got all the power. He's got all the athleticism. He's got the size. He's got the nasty. I love everything. He's the girl with the daddy issues that is still stuck in high school. I could fix her. I could fix her. Give me a chance. I could fix her.
Okay, that can go south real fast.
I can fix her.
Oh, okay. So while
That's
Newt and I are trying to collect ourselves, Owen, tell us your story on Skylar Gill Howard from Texas Tech.
Yeah, so I talked about it a little bit earlier. When I was working at UB, I was the D tackle guy in addition to the linebackers. And I was watching in preparation for our game against Northern Illinois when they were ranked after beating Notre Dame. By the way, UB won that game. Sean Dolak clutch interception in the 4th quarter, just got to say. But for when I was scouting them, we would go ahead and watch ahead at the position that we were assigned. And since I was the tackle, Skylar Gill Howard was like their dude. And I graded him out as like an all-MAC player. I'm not surprised he transferred up, especially to a team like Texas Tech that was able to just throw money to anybody who had a pulse at any level of football. So I'm glad he got his bag. But for me, yeah, he was a guy that I watched and like immediately just absolutely was a menace at the MAC level. And then I see him go up here at Texas Tech. He's undersized, 6'1", 290. Again, not size and that stuff doesn't really change from place to place. But when you're playing in the MAC specifically, that's what a lot of their D tackles at all the teams. Like when UB was scouting D linemen, that was their desired size, was 6'1", 290 to end. Because there's a lot more outside zone. You need to be able to get off your blocks and move in space. So him transitioning from that to more of a bigger school where there's going to be some power gap schemes coming at your face and you're going to have to go against some bigger dudes. I just didn't really love the jump he's made there. Now, he has some fun plays. He's got a high motor, high character. I love just the way he plays, and I'm sure Newt's going to sing his Purple Prose because he just absolutely plays with his hair on fire. But he's got some twitch. He's got some speed. He shows it up in a bit as a pass rusher there. But if you're going to ask me to draft him as anything other than like maybe a DPR, especially with his size and his ability at that, at the next step up, I think he's finally found his home as a prospect where, I don't know if he has much of a power game as a pass rusher. He's definitely going to be a guy that gets buried in the run game. So if you have an extra spot and you like that kind of attitude and that mindset, and you just need a guy that can come in and chip it on third downs, I think he's going to be a guy that can come in and bring that to your room. I definitely see him more as like a practice squad elevation type player. I have him as like a low, late day 3 grade, just from the size concerns and how that shows up in his tape. But for the most part, I'm pretty happy. I was happy watching this film as a guy that knew him, as a MAC player, and then seeing how his compete levels kind of stayed the same. But yeah, physical limitations for me kind of hold him back.
Man,
go ahead.
I did not think I was going to be this much higher on Skylar Gill-Howard than you. I'll just put it out there. Like he's still a day 3 grade for me, early day 3. I have him just a touch ahead of Albert Regis, but like those two guys are right around the same for me. And I think Owen hit it really well. It's the size is going to be what kills him, and the things that come with it, the ability to, or the inability to, really show good play strength and anchor against the run. He does have a good natural leverage, but that's because his spring measurements have him at 5'11" and 7/8 inches. Like Texas Tech is adding on a little bit more just to get him at that plus 6 foot. He didn't even come in at that spring measurements. You've got concerns about them, the arm length with that being under 31-inch arms, and the frame that you bring with that, and all of those things, they are going to be things that absolutely make it challenging to look at him and legitimize him as a prospect. So I understand definitely where Owen's coming from. When you look at him as a DPR and an interior pass rusher, you look at him as being a little bit undersized, and then lacking that strength profile
a little bit.
There are definitely things that you might not want to sign up for him with that. But I think that just the juice that he offers as a pass rusher, it's the active hands. Owen said it already. It's the hot motor, the first step, the play speed, everything that he does on the inside is going to be about 1.5 times what interior offensive lineman is used to seeing. And I think it's a really, really dangerous way to approach the game from there. And I think it's something that teams are going to covet when we're in a pass-heavy league. Do I think he's going to be your starting defensive tackle? No, I think Owen's correct in saying that he's going to probably be more of that late down kind of guy. But if you're running 5, 6 deep in your defensive line group, especially if you have an odd man front, you're able to stick this guy at a 5 tech or at a 3, like a 4-eye, and kind of let him feast in between the tackle and guard and use that first step quickness. I think he's going to be someone that there are going to be teams out there that really like what he offers, and they're going to see him and, be willing to spend a day 3 pick on that. Now he does have an ankle injury? I think he had a season-ending ankle injury. Right now it is listed as he's out indefinitely, with potential to return via the postseason. My guess is that unless Texas Tech is playing, in the semifinals, which they very well could be, like they're playing really good football right now, but we might not see him again this year. So that, and ultimately in terms of his draft stock, is a really big negative shot for him. But I think if you look at what he offers, I really, really like him. But that frame and length is really, really tough to get over, and the lack of strength that comes with it. So I do see where Owen's coming from. I like the bit that he offers as a pass rusher, and I think he does it so well that I'm willing to take a bet on him earlier in day 3.
Okay. So the next player, a little story here. So Jamal Johnson, who is an NFL agent, he's been on a Draft Professor podcast. He's in the Draft Professor group chat. Shot me a private message. He says, nobody's talking about Aaron Hall, but I have some agents I have some scouts that are telling me that he is draftable. So, I text a few of my favorite draft professors, including Newt, Owen, Randall. Hey, what do you guys think of Aaron Hall? Is he draftable? And Owen said, yeah, we should definitely podcast on him. So, Owen, why should we be podcasting about Aaron Hall from Duke?
Yes, 6'4", 290. Real fun player to watch just because he has that explosive, out of his stance, attack, pass rush style play where he's able to, win with speed, rip and bend around guards, and really give them a handful to work with in those tight quarters. If you're going to be a guy that wins with kind of that athletic side of your ability in the interior, you have to do it consistently, both as a run defender and as a pass rusher. And when he's able to shoot gaps as a run defender, I think he does make some good plays there. But he makes a lot of splash plays as a pass rusher. So he was a real fun watch to see there. He is 290. I probably wager guess he's a little lighter than that. Seems a little bit skinnier in the frame.
Spring measurements had him at 296.
Really? All right. Hey, that is a plus in my book then. Because for right now, even though he's able to get out of the stance, get into guys, and he just really isn't capable with his hands at the moment and holding that point of attack, especially in the run game, where if they're trying to stretch him out or even down block right at him, he struggles to kind of hold his ground. And he flashes an anchor sometimes, especially in one-on-one situations, but like when he has to use his hands to take on, engage, and get off a block and then make a play in the run game, he's just not a guy that is going to be able to do that. I think if you're going to want him to excel as a D tackle in the NFL, you're going to want to be in a gap shooting type system where he's attacking half a man, trying to beat guys off the snap and blow plays up in the backfield. And then when it gets down to late and long, you really let him unleash as a pass rusher and allow him to go out there and just be an athlete. So he's a guy that has some tools right now. I think I wouldn't really take him super high. I think he is draftable. I wouldn't take him super high just because I think he is just an absolute red flag in run defense at the moment. And while his pass rushing is fun, it definitely does need some more touching up and polishing up. So he's got the athleticism. He's got some flashy moves here or there, but he's got a lot to work on before he's going to be a guy that I'm really going to be pounding the table for, especially like earlier day 3.
So, Owen, Aaron Hall or Tonka Hemingway, which player did you like more?
That's a loaded question, Jim. I'm the leader of the Tonka Hemingway fan club here. I had Tonka graded higher. Aaron Hall isn't giving up nearly as much size as he is, but I also thought Tonka showed a bit more as a run defender in college, at least, than Hall has so far at this point.
Okay. New.
I agree with the majority of it. I think that his frame a little bit light. We talk about was it Cameron Ball being 6'5", 323, and then now you've got Aaron Hall 6'4", 296. So a little bit lean, but I think that he does in one-on-one run defense reps hold up pretty well, and I liked him in those situations. I think that you see his anchor start to wane in double teams. And once again, for everyone listening, if you're like, how the hell are you supposed to win in a double team? You're not. You're not supposed to beat a double team, but you don't want to get wiped out by a double team. The idea behind it is if you're an interior defensive lineman, you want to clog up the space between the tackles when the running back is running between the tackles and not allow for that hole to be open. So if you're able to just hold your spot, that's a win. But I don't think that Aaron Hall at that size, at the way that he plays and with a lack of anchor, excuse me, is really able to do that. So I think that the things that you see about him, they do flash the twitch, the juice off the line as an interior defensive lineman, and the one-on-one reps and the stack and shed ability in those, they're phenomenal, and they're a ton of fun to watch. But when you start to take a look at him in a little bit more of a scheme where he is, up against, stronger, more effective interior offensive lineman, which is what he's going to see in the league, that's where he can struggle a little bit. So for me, he came in right around Cameron Ball. I think they were separated by, fractions of a point in terms of that. So like kind of that middle day 3 for me, I saw Aaron Hall.
Okay. Now we are flipping. We have 2 edges we're going to cover today. Dani Dennis Sutton from Penn State. Everybody loved him in summer scouting. Newt, what kind of season has he had as we are like the second week in November right now?
Question, is it Dani or is it Dani? I've heard it both ways.
I've heard it both ways. I'm using Dani until somebody tells me that I'm wrong.
All right, I saw the first time I saw it, and I said it to myself. I said Dani, so I'm going to go with Dani as well. So, Dani Dennis Sutton, he was a guy. I think he was like my edge 6 in summer scouting. As I went through that, you look at the guy's pedigree; it's insane. Like he's a 5-star recruit via 247. He had a high school basketball and track and field background. He was part of the All-American Bowl invitee. I'm so sorry. I'm like kind of in Owen's boat right now. 2-time high school captain. At the end of last year, 2-time all academic, all Big Ten. He was 2022 freshman All-American, and like the list goes on and on. Like this guy's got a great pedigree to him. You look at him last year, and one of the biggest things I said about him was he was there for the big moments. You took a look at him during Penn State's postseason run. He showed out. That was some of the best tape that he put out. I watched the Notre Dame game. I watched the Boise State game for him. And it was moments where you're like, this dude, like, yeah, Abdul Carter's on the other side. Phenomenal player. But Dani Dennis Sutton is still showing out. And I think we had to take a look at him this year. There is that effective, like him now being the dude. And it's one of those things where you don't want to say, oh, he's getting his success because Abdul Carter's on the other side. But now I start to take a look at him, and the pass work productivity has dropped. The ability for him to impact the game in both run and pass defense has dropped. And I think that he's kind of leveling out as a prospect for me in terms of where he stands out in this class. Because for me, I think he's got a great build. I think he's explosive out of his stance. He can line up in a 2, 3, even 4-point stance. At 265, I think it makes him kind of versatile in the way that he's able to be utilized. And I think that he has really good pass rush ability with both power, finesse, and speed. The issue is I think he is able to rush with those pass rush moves. I just don't think he shows out in any one. I don't think he's got really that great a bend. I don't think he is super strong in a bull rush where he's going to be moving these larger offensive tackles. And I think that the foot quickness is good, but it's not great where he is really keeping these guys on their toes and getting them crossed over. So I think there's a lack of high-end athleticism from him that, is kind of leading to some of the production that we're looking at this year. And ultimately, in my opinion, kind of a step back from his 2024 film. Right now, I got a early day 3 grade on him.
Okay. Owen.
Yes, this was a guy I didn't get to watch him for the summer scouting, or at least not in super in depth where I went back and watched those games. I did for this, and yeah, he was definitely someone who flashed a lot that you were really excited about, and especially in those high leverage games like you were talking about, those Notre Dame games, the Boise State games. For me though, with watching a lot of his film from this year, he just didn't wow me a lot. Like he's a great athlete, don't get me wrong. Like 265, 265 with that amount of athleticism. He's no Darrell Jackson, but you know what? If I got my hands on him, I think I could do some work. But if I would if I was an NFL defensive line coach, that's what I'd be saying. But
or if you were a high school sweetheart and we're looking for girls with daddy issues.
Right. But for me, he just played really high out of his stance a lot, especially with his pad level. So it really impacted his run defense that way, where he should be able to fly around and reset this line of scrimmage and be this kind of stack shed get off, kind of like Quiddy Pay-esque I was looking for. And that's like my always go-to for like solid run defending college DNs. And I didn't really see a ton of that, especially with him utilizing his hands and being able to set that hard edge on the end, even though he has the size. And then as a pass rusher, a lot of his wins this year was just that I'm a better athlete than you. I'm going to beat you to the spot, and I'm going to get to your quarterback because you're playing the catch-up game. He doesn't really have a ton when it comes to like a consecutive pass rush plan, how deep his bag can really go. Like he pulls out some moves, he has some bend, he has good speed, but it's not really a full picture. It's really kind of just he doesn't really have to win by being a technician right now. He just can go out there be this dude that runs around your offensive tackle or can step back inside, and when they're oversetting to beat him, and he's able to get inside and get some production that way. So I thought that, both as a run defender and as a pass rusher, I was kind of left underwhelmed despite his great physical profile. So I also have him as kind of as a middle day 3 pick, just because, again, it's a guy that outside of the physical tools doesn't really do a lot for me. He reminds me a lot of Zach Harrison when he was at Ohio State, just a really high level athlete. Now Harrison was a bit bigger, a bit longer, could be a good run defender at times too, but I think Dennis Sutton has the athletic edge on him, but in the same way, it doesn't really have that pass rush bag or plan that I wanted to see out of a guy that people were talking about going early day 3, and I think Harrison was a 3rd round pick even. So it's just a guy that I was looking for a lot more out of, especially after seeing the flashes from last year.
Question for you: Who's a better not pass rusher? Who's a better athlete, Gabe Akis or Danny Dennis Sutton?
Pure athlete?
Yeah,
I may take Dennis Sutton just because the way he moves at that size, out in space, and he just show it off a lot, especially when he does win as a pass rusher. So I keep wanting to come back for more, and I just keep being left with more and more disappointment on a consistent rep-to-rep basis.
And I think that's something I'm not wowed by him as an athlete. And I think that's probably the difference between the way that we see him, even though our assessment of him is very similar. I think he is a decent run defender. I don't think I was as underwhelmed by him in run defense as you. I just don't see the athleticism in terms of how he fits into that profile of what I want a stereotypical edge rusher to be. I think he is okay, but nothing special. Where I think when we talk about Gabe Akis, the biggest thing from him was he's 280 pounds and he's still moving pretty well and he's disrupting the pass game. He just sucks as a run defender. And that was kind of the conversation that we had. Hey, you shouldn't be this bad as a run defender. With Danny Dennis Sutton, it's kind of the other thing. But I don't think he's as productive as a pass rusher because I don't think he's quite the athlete. But it sounds like I said, probably you said middle day 3. I'm a little bit kind of more early day 3, but very similar.
And that sounds accurate. Again, this is the 3rd time we have covered Dennis Sutton on the channel. What I'm hearing from you guys is very accurate to the other 5 draft professors that have covered it. Next player, David Bailey from Texas Tech. Owen, is he going in round 1?
See, I'm probably going to be a bit lower on him than most people are because I've definitely seen him in a ton of first round mocks. But I mean, just for reference, I have him of the guys we graded as edge rushers. I have him as edge 7. I am no okay.
Who are the 6 that you have in front of him, if you don't mind?
Ruben Bain, TJ Parker, but I have yet to come back and update his grade. A lot of these guys I haven't updated these grades. These were grades from summer scouting.
Okay.
Mesidor, Llewellyn, Mason R. Thomas, and Cassius Howell were tied with him in grade. So there was those guys. Howell we covered for this podcast. I'm just a big Howell guy. And actually, this was a player I wanted to talk up in contrast with Howell specifically when we got talking about David Bailey. But for Mason R. Thomas and Llewellyn and Parker, I have yet to go back and re-up those grades. But for Bailey, great pass rusher. Has the athleticism, has the bag, is able to beat guys. That game against Utah, I know we were talking about Spencer Fano last night with Jerry Ostrowski. The only game I've ever seen Fano actively get his ass kicked, he was just absolutely drowning out there against both of these pass rushers. And a guy that just comes out and knows how to beat you, has different ways to beat you. Where I start getting kind of stuck with him is he's not a terrible run defender. Let me get that out of the way. As a guy that is shooting gaps or scraping from the backside as your weak side player and coming down laterally down the line of scrimmage and making that play, I really do like him. It's more so he's 6'3", 250. He's going to have to be maybe a weak side even end or 3-4 outside linebacker and give him that space. But even then, 3-4 outside linebackers, if they're going to run towards your way, you're going to need to try to set a harder edge than what I think David Bailey is. Like I saw him getting his ass kicked by some tight ends on film, getting drive blocked down the field. And that's where I was kind of curious to see the conversation with Cassius Howell, where Howell is not a traditional, line him up, edge rusher, set the edge either. But I think the fact that you could probably play him as like more of a stack off-ball linebacker and run defending downs, that's more of an easier projected role, whereas Bailey is clearly an edge through and through. No matter what down it is, he's going to be an edge. He's just going to struggle because he has to play edge against teams that are going to want to run the ball right at him. So for a guy that does everything right as a pass rusher, you want to bring him in and be a DPR immediately and then try to build him up with some muscle, maybe get him up to 260, see if he can still retain some of those athletic edge and then be able to fight and attack and set that harder edge if he gets through an NFL pro strength and conditioning staff. I think he could be a guy that develops a bit more. But for me, he just has some stuff that, like, again, still I have him like a high second round grade. So if you told me he went in the first round because of positional value, I think that's definitely a clear thing to say that, or clearly I'm going to be on board with that. But for me, if I had my choice, I'd be taking some of these other guys over him. If I need an edge in round one.
All right, I'm fairly close to Owen. Then when he said 7th, I thought it was of the guys we have covered thus far.
No.
Not of like, I was like, who in the hell are the 6 guys ahead of David Bailey? But when you start throwing in, for anyone that's like not a regular week to week listener, number one, stop it.
You need to listen every week. If you're not a week to week listener.
We haven't with me and Owen, we haven't covered Park, we haven't covered Bain, we haven't covered Llewellyn, and some of those other guys. So hearing those names in front of it and then having him get to he was 7 for you.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm very, very close to that. He's edge 6 for me. I've got 4 guys ahead of him that I still need to do a reevaluation based on their fall film. And it is, Parker, Bain, Llewellyn. I've got Keldrick Falk up there as well.
Yeah.
And then LT Overton is right around there. I don't know where those guys are going to fall. I've got to see.
You just listed next week's podcast.
Yeah, pretty much, right? So we'll see where all those guys shake out. Next week's stacked. And then I think we've got that surprise player, which we can talk about at the end. But I digress. David Bailey, to go back to the very first question that you had asked in regards to him, Jim, is he going in the first round? I think Owen said my sentiments as well. I don't have a first round grade on him, but I don't have 32 first round grades. So I think by default of there having to be 32 first round picks, I think he's got an opportunity to go in the later portion of the first round. I have a high second round grade on him because he is a freak of a pass rusher. He had, and once again, my stats are a little bit out of date, but when I had looked this up, 39.4% pass rush win rate on true pass sets. That's like Josiah Stewart numbers from last year. And the crazy thing is, the only one that was better than Josiah Stewart last year was David Bailey at Stanford with like 45%. So you start talking about him in terms of like what he's able to do. And now you start talking about a guy that is consistently doing it over a 2-year span at 2 different programs. And that's something where I look at it and I say, this isn't a result of, X, Y, and Z. This is David Bailey being that dude. And I have a lot more confidence in him in terms of like what I would expect out of him because of his ability to do that over those 2 years at 2 different programs. So I love seeing that from him. The pass rush is going to be what makes him his money. It's going to be what gets him picked high. I think that Owen said it really, really well with his run. I want him to be better. I think that he would be a top 15 pick if he was a better run defender. And like, we wouldn't even be having this conversation on like, is he going to be in the first round? Yeah, maybe not. Because man, like what he does well, the explosion off the line, the refined pass rush. And this is where you start talking about like these, top 40 pass rushers versus like later on. These are guys that have like a pass rush plan. These are guys that have the ability to go to an inside counter move, are going to be able to win on the outside in multiple ways and do it in ways that set themselves up later. And David Bailey absolutely is doing it. He's got outside speed and corner ability, a counter spin, swim move. If you haven't seen his spin move on the inside, it's stupid good. It is so much fun to watch. It is second in this class only to one of my favorite players, Llewellyn. And it's a thing of beauty, truth be told. So I think all of those things are going to be things that prop him up. Ultimately, the frame is a little bit smaller. Owen said that with being a weak side defensive end or outside linebacker, and the run defense. There is, and I'm not like trying to throw shit all over the place, but does have a couple character concerns as well. Taking a look at his time at Stanford, had an issue with North Carolina State that was really not the greatest. And then this year with a cameraman against the ASU game, I hate seeing it twice. I hate seeing it twice. Those are things that when I am looking at him in those team meetings, he's going to be one that I look at a little bit more closely in terms of, what is kind of the general consensus with you and NFL GMs and NFL organizations in terms of those character concerns, because I can guarantee every single meeting that he goes in, those two plays are going to be up on the screen and he's going to have to explain both of them. So it's not for me something right now where like I'm knocking him down my board for it, but it's something where I have it marked as a potential character concern and I'm keeping an eye on it.
Owen, who was your higher graded prospect? Mike Green from Marshall or David Bailey from Texas Tech?
I had Mike Green graded higher. I loved him equally as a pass rusher. I think he had a lot of bend, a lot of speed, a lot of athleticism, but also kind of had a bit of a better usage of his hands and ability to play. I think David Bailey's an okay run defender if he's playing in space and attacking behind, but he's an atrocious play side run defender. Whereas I never watched anything with Mike Green and thought, okay, that's something that's like absolutely like god awful type of stuff with his game. So like David Bailey has a giant black hole in one area of his game, which is what's dragging him down. If he could play that a bit better, even just like as a play side run stopper, I think he could do, even like just being like a hold your head above water player, he'd be higher graded. But right now, I still have Mike Green graded higher.
Okay, and then Newt, character concerns, bigger character concerns on Mike Green or David Bailey?
The Mike Green character concerns, the issues surrounding it was worse. And I don't mean this. I feel like I'm going to get like this pulled out in a bad way, but I think the time away from it, and I'm not excusing anything that Mike Green did, but that happened his senior year of high school. And, we were talking about him as was he a redshirt senior last year or was he a true senior? Regardless,
I think it was a redshirt because he took a year away from the game. Right.
And I know that there were things that came up at Virginia too. But you remove him 3 years from that. I ultimately don't love what I heard about Mike Green. But having 3 years between that and drafting him, you start to say, okay, these things are what they are. They've been handled. They have gone through whatever system they have to go through. I'm looking at Mike Green now as a player. With the repetition now for Bailey over the last 2 years, I don't love that it's so recent. I saw someone on Twitter mention it in terms of like Princely, where they're like, oh yeah, Princely had the bad thing with UF. I don't think I never knocked Princely Unman Mielen for his little spat with UF. It was a heated game. He had just come from that school. He was going through the fans. That was like the only time that ever came up with Princely. This is not like repeated with Bailey. I almost look at it more like a Norman Lott type thing, where you kind of have these things coming back. Norman Lott had, in my opinion, a couple more things under his belt. But I think that David Bailey, ultimately, the character concerns aren't as bad, but they are more recent, which I don't love.
And to add to that, David Bailey's character issues you can see on film, right? Because everything is happening during a game where he's like kicking a player or stepping on a player or something that we would say is like unsportsmanlike conduct.
Correct.
So that was a conversation that needed to be had. I'm glad that you brought up the character concerns for David Bailey. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Newt.
Yeah.
So we alluded to this already, but next week, you guys, it's the A+ list. Like the list doesn't get any better. Mikel Kamara from Indiana, Ruben Bain from Miami, TJ Parker from Clemson, Keldrick Falk from Auburn, Amari Washington from Oregon, Dante Corleone from Cincinnati, LT Overton from Alabama, Peter Woods from Clemson, and Arvell Reese from Ohio State. So there is 9 players. So next week's podcast will go a little bit longer than this one.
Yeah. No, that list is, I mean, if my summer scouting means anything to like these players this year, then holy smokes. There's a lot of players I had graded very, very high across my board. So I'm super excited to talk about him next week. And with the addition of Arvell Reese, who is just an absolute freak that I'm excited to get to talk about him as an edge prospect.
So, Owen, do you want to tell everybody about the weekly huddle and other content?
So I'm here 2 days a week, like we talked about. Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. and then Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Obviously, we're here right now. Tuesdays, I'm with Jerry Ostrowski, former Buffalo Bills offensive lineman, talking about offensive line prospects. And then, obviously, me and New here are button heads on defensive line prospects every week. So, having fun over at the Weekly YouTube channel. I'm going to get back to once this school semester kind of frees up and I have more time. I'm going to get back to doing some live stream scouting. Actually, if you go back and you watch if you go to my Patreon and you're able to get access to that, you can see a previous live stream that I did where I scouted one of the players that we're going to be covering next weekend. So the one player in that list that I kind of don't have the greatest opinion on. So you'll definitely have to wait to see for that next week. I'm not high on one of those guys. So we'll see who that is coming up.
First of all, I know it's not Kamara because Kamara made it into that list because Owen liked him in the summer.
Love him.
I had to guess it's either Corleone or Parker. But
it's 100% Corleone. I know it is. I want to get Bill Sparks to tune in the comment section so we can tear you apart next week.
We'll see. But yeah, so you can catch me on do live streams over there, and then if you don't miss the live streams, you can check out the posts of them going up on the Patreon over at Weekly Huddle. So that's what I got going on right now over on that channel.
New.
Yeah, now you can actually I want to pause really quick. I already did this last night, but I gotta do it again. I watched for the first time Owen and Jerry, their full episode on Tuesdays. Those guys are so much fun to watch. Even if you're looking to listen to it, just kind of had the night free, tossed it on, and what those guys did, talking about offensive linemen, hearing it from Jerry playing for damn near a decade in the league. And then Owen with his scouting background and the knowledge that he brings, that was absolutely phenomenal. If you guys haven't checked that out, please do. I think those guys are great on Tuesday nights, and Owen does a phenomenal job talking about that with the Bills offensive tackle who played. Owen, did Jerry play while you were alive or no?
I think he retired the year I was born.
Okay,
I'll double check that.
Jerry is the same age as my older brother.
Okay.
So
it's your older brother. Okay.
Yeah.
He retired the year I was born.
Nice. But no, for me, Newt Weston, you can follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter at NFL Draft _Weston. I've been fairly consistent in trying to clip a lot of the guys that we're talking about. Some of my guys that I really like, I'll put about 2 or 3 clips on. There's a guy next week that I didn't watch over summer scouting, and I am already in love with. So that has been one that I've been kind of propping up a little bit. But over on Twitter is where you can find a lot of my content. I do run zerotechdraft.com. Haven't been updating it just because the only thing I've been focusing on so far has been the players for this podcast, which is where you can find me and my opinions in probably their completeness on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern time on Mrs. Irrelevant with the Draft Professor. I think I nailed it. I'm not sure.
And I follow at NFL Draft Weston on Twitter, so I know exactly the player that he's talking about. It's gonna be a lot of bouncing off each other next week for how happy we are talking about some of these guys.
Oh, I'm excited then. That's gonna be fun.
So I got to give props to you guys, right? So this is maybe week 6 of us doing this, right? So a lot of podcasts talk about the really good players that Newt and Owen will get to talk about next week. But there was a 6-week runway where we're sorting through day 3 players, and you are propping up day 3 players. So give Newt a follow, give Owen a follow. We can't make this content without them. So Draft Professor, you can follow at NFL Draft Fanatic, no I in Fanatic. And if you go to the X page, what you'll see on the pinned tweet is the schedule that's scrolling across the bottom. So we have 13 podcasts at the Draft Professor that are all breaking down the prospects. We do quarterbacks twice a week. We do corners twice a week. We do offensive line twice a week. We do defensive line 3 times a week. We've already finished tight ends. We've already finished running backs. And we've got other podcasts that'll finish up linebackers in a couple weeks, etc. So if there's a position that your team needs, we've broken down the players that we think will be drafted in rounds 1 through 5. So a couple of, let's say, tests of the player list. When the Senior Bowl announces their defensive line list, I'm curious if we've evaluated all the players. Right? Like that's a really good measure. Did we podcast on the right players? So we'll be doing a Senior Bowl defensive line podcast. We have Newton and Owen will be podcasting on November 19th. They will have one more podcast on December 3rd. And then on December 10th, it will be their defensive tackle big board and their edge big board. So you can see how
I think we go 2 weeks. I think isn't it December 17th is our big board? I could be wrong.
It could be the 17th. I don't know. I mean, we can talk about what to do in the 10th, but I don't know that there's more players that are going to grade any higher than the ones that you've already podcasted on.
Oh, there's always more players. There's always more players.
Right, but I don't think they're going to grade higher than who you've already covered.
No, I get that.
If the other Draft Professors are any indication. Right, I think we've hit all the day 2 guys. After next week and the week after, because the week after, Llewellyn's on it, Dominique Orange is on it. So
Big citrus.
Yep.
Big citrus.
So for Newt,
is there a position group with a better collection of nicknames than the defensive lineman? I don't think so. I think between the Fridge, the Godfather, Big Citrus, I love it.
Yeah, I haven't heard too many nicknames coming from any of the other positions.
Actually, you know my favorite nickname to date now, and it's stemming off of Dominique Orange.
It's
Mackay Lemon with Lil Citrus.
that?
That's my favorite one I've heard.
I like that, Big Citrus and Little Citrus. And wouldn't it be hysterical if they were drafted by the same team?
Oh
Yeah,
man,
the Buffalo Bills.
That'd be the greatest.
It'd be awesome if the Buffalo Bills drafted both of them.
For Owen, Newt, myself, for the 110 people at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy your Wednesday night. We will see you on a podcast again tomorrow for our second show on safeties and our running back big board. See you tomorrow, everybody.